We do have a microphone here, so as you speak, this should pick up your questions so our live stream can pick it up. That's the reason that is here. So feel free to use your, we call it a teacher voice, but be loud when you ask your questions. Thank you.
Good morning. Hello, everyone. I am Sheila Blanco, Public Information Manager for Savannah-Chatham County Public Schools, and I thank you all for coming out today. We have a lot of things that have been happening recently that we wanted an opportunity to address questions about since we've come back from the winter break. I am going to introduce Dr. Denise Watts. She is our Superintendent of Schools, of course, and she has got three main topics she wants to address today: the recently released CCRPI scores, the governor's supplemental pay incentive that was just provided to all SCCPSS employees, and also, of course, our long-range facilities plan, phase one of which was passed by the board yesterday. There are other staff members here as well that Dr. Watts may call up to further expound upon those topics and answer any more detailed questions you may have. So right now, I'd like to call up Dr. Watts.
Good morning and Happy New Year. We have hit the ground running in Savannah-Chatham County Public School System as we have commenced upon second semester in the 2024 calendar year. We are really excited about some of the data that we have received based on last year's performance. And today I want to highlight the College Career Readiness Performance Index scores. And what we are seeing in that data is that our students are showing really positive growth that we hope to maintain this school year as we look at testing at the end of the year. There are a number of components that make up our CCRPI index. It's a complicated formula. And it's important to note that much of the data has been impacted over the last 3 years when you're looking at that data, so it's very difficult to compare year over year. But what we are seeing is growth. Performance was strongest in the progress, closing gaps, and graduation rate areas, wherein the district outperformed the state in one or more of the grade bands. However, the district did fall below the state in readiness, performing 5 to 6 points lower per grade band in that particular area. Over 75% of our schools did exceed the state in at least one component. So we are excited. We are celebrating this growth. We're using that as momentum as we go into the second half of this school year. On the closing gaps component, scores exceeded those of the state by 33.3 points in elementary grades, 28.1 points in middle grades, and 10.3 points in high school. Our readiness component, again, this is a both and. Our readiness component fell within 5 to 6 points of the state after the graduation rate component continues to outperform the state average. So again, seeing some positive growth, but we are also seeing areas where we need to continue to push. This data gives us an indication that we still have work to do, but today we are celebrating the growth and the progress and stressing the fact that we are trending in the right direction. I should use this as an opportunity to thank our teachers, our principals, our students, and our parents whose hard work and focus in school each and every day contribute to the progress that we are seeing. As it relates to our teachers and staff in particular, I want to highlight the governor's supplemental pay incentive. I am sure that everyone was extremely excited to hear on December the 18th when the governor announced that incentive pay would be offered to all state employees. We heard that loud and clear in Savannah-Chatham County Public Schools and echoed the governor's sentiment that we need to recognize and financially reward our employees that do this work each and every day. Our HR and finance divisions departments got hard at work right after the winter break to ensure that the state monies would be received in employee paychecks and processed expeditiously. Yesterday, our board did its part in making that financial incentive come to life. They took action to approve local funds that would supplement what the governor provided to make sure that every staff member, including those who are not funded by state dollars, receive the same incentive. Just as a reminder, our budget is comprised of state-funded revenue, but all of our employees are not paid from the state. Some are paid from grants, some are paid from federal dollars. And so we wanted to really work to make sure that regardless of the source of someone's salary, every single employee received the benefit of that financial incentive. So through effective budgeting and resource stewardship, we are in a position to pay all of our employees in the school system this financial incentive. This did require an additional $3.8 million of local funds to make sure that we covered all employees. And our approach with these dollars also included extra dollars for tax implications. So if an employee, when the money comes to each employee, the amount will actually be a little bit more than $1,000, so that the take-home pay is actually as close to $1,000 as possible. As a reminder to everyone, 85% of our budget is made up of salary and how we pay and compensate our employees. Again, we echo the sentiments of our governor in this incentive as our employees continue to go above and beyond in how we work and with children to impact student outcomes. We value our employees, and we thank our Board of Education for the above and beyond action they took yesterday to cover all of our employees. So we are excited about that. The last thing that I will mention today, as I turn it over to other folks for you all to hear from, is our long-range facilities plan. This has been an iterative and collaborative process over the last several months. We have been working very hard to balance the capacity levels at every school, ensuring that all of our buildings operate with optimal life cycles, improve transportation, and we better use our facility resources. At the same time, we are also working to balance that with humanity and people's tolerance for change and how changing impacts our students. So we use not only facility data, attendance boundary configurations, but we also use the engagement and input from the community and our board to really put together a phase one long-range facilities plan that we think is a win-win and effective compromise for our community. So based on our continued analysis and consideration of all the feedback, yesterday we did provide a recommendation to the board, and it was approved 9-0. The final phase, the phase that the board saw yesterday, did include some modifications with a specific focus on Western Chatham County, and we were able to put in our plan a provision that also accounted for Gould Elementary School, and we also adjusted the configuration of the multi-site campus to allow for future growth and maximize its use in proximity to newly drawn attendance boundaries. So several major components and tweaks have been made over the last several months, some of which you saw today. Again, we're proud of that iterative and collaborative process, which demonstrated solutions orientation and a focus on doing not only what's best for students, but what's most efficient and effective for the district. In sum, I'd like to thank the Board of Education for their feedback. I'd also like to thank the community for their feedback and engagement. Last, but certainly not least, I would be remiss if I did not say thank you to our staff for countless hours reviewing data, considering feedback, and understanding the challenges we face, and putting together a plan that's going to help our district long term. All recommendations will be in effect for the 24-25 school year. So everything that you saw yesterday, we'll continue to plan for the rest of this semester. Community engagement, parent engagement will continue to occur, but at the same time, we will be moving into phase 2 of a long-range facilities plan, and we anticipate bringing that to the board in the spring. With those three updates covered, I'd like to call Dr. Bernadette Ball Oliver to the podium, and she'll be able to go a little bit deeper into the CCRPI data. So with that said, I'll introduce her.
Good morning. To give a bit more information, details on our CCRPI data, I think one of our proudest moments is the progress that our schools that were on the state-identified list made. So we had schools that were on the comprehensive support and improvement list, that's the state's CSI list, as well as schools that were on the targeted support and improvement list. And we are proud to announce that Brock, A.B. Williams, and Durin Middle School, that's Brock Elementary, A.B. Williams Elementary, and Durin Middle School exited that list. They are no longer on that state list. Also, on the TSI list, the targeted support and improvement list, we had two schools, Largo Elementary School and Windsor Forest Elementary School. Both of those schools exited that list as well. And so we want to recognize the accomplishments of the administrators and the teachers in those schools and their commitment to continuous improvement and growth, recognizing that across the district, we are all in a mode of continuous improvement and growth because we still have work to do, but commending our staff for the work that they are doing every day and that they are moving the needle for our students in our community. So those are kind of the drill down, really great details that we want to share. And as you heard yesterday, and you've actually seen before in the data, our graduation rate, of course, which is one of the components for our high school, is at 89.1%, which is a 1.5% increase from the previous year. So any questions?
Obviously, I acknowledge the great work that you all have been doing. I was at yesterday's board meeting, so I got to hear some personal anecdotes as well, which were great to hear. But I did kind of want to touch on that overall readiness component. We're 6% below the state's level. So I just wanted to kind of check in and see, you've seen that data. What are some of the things that you might try to implement to, get us closer and maybe even above that state level?
So yes, thank you for that question. And prior to, well, in 2019, we actually were sitting above the state level. I think what you will find, one of the greater impacts, if you look at our data, is the attendance. That really is having an impact as it relates to our indicator, especially in high school. Yesterday's data was solely focused on the high school component, but attendance is one of the great barriers or impacts on that data, and we continue to work with that. I think as we shared yesterday, all of our high schools have made that a focus point in their school improvement plans and are working various strategies to improve that attendance. And I also think you heard our board members, again, bring us back to the fact that in order for us to impact those other areas like the accelerated enrollment, of course, and the college and career readiness component, we have to have kids in school for that to happen. That's the first component. Kids have to be in school. And so that is where a lot of our work as it relates to the college and career readiness piece for high schools lies, in improving our attendance so that we impact all the other indicators.
Related to the attendance, which was for the cohort last year sitting at around 56%. How do you balance that against the 89.1% graduation rate when only 56% are showing up?
So as we shared on yesterday, and we do have those slides out on our presentation, that there are a number of factors that go into graduation rate, and we actually provide a really strong support structure. I think one of the main things that we talked about, and we'll start with, is our master schedule. And so reminding everyone that the state requires 23 units for graduation, and we require 24 units for graduation. But we've been very intentional about developing a master schedule over a 4-year period in high school that allows for the acquisition of 32 units of credit, and that is during the school day. In addition to that, we provide what we call twilight opportunities for our students, and that's opportunities for our students after school if they've experienced some challenges or if they're seeking to take initial credit for some courses in areas. 2 times a year, they actually can take up to 2 classes. So I think it was Dr. Bringman who kind of did the math on that yesterday. That's 4 additional opportunities to earn credit, or 4 units of credit you can earn in addition to the 8. So we really have used our master schedule as a tool to support, but also understanding that zeros are not an option, and so failure is not an option. And so our schools also developing those structures in which our teachers really work hard to go back and help students remediate and recover those standards so that they are successful. And so you will see that maybe I wasn't successful the first time in my 10th grade complet course, but with that support structure, I was able to attain that credit before my actual date for graduation. So all of those support structures help us in getting students across the stage.
Can you speak more to what the school district is doing to address the attendance issues this year?
So I can tell you that we have revamped, so to speak. If you're familiar, prior to all of this, we had attendance teams. And so we have strengthened those attendance teams. Those attendance teams at our schools, they look at the attendance weekly, and they make contact with parents, as well as in our upper grades, the students are brought in and their conversations. The social workers are part of that attendance team, the counselor, school administration, teachers may be called in, teachers that have specific relationships with students, as well as mentors and sometimes community partners that may have those relationships and connections. And then we also look at how are we capitalizing on the utilization of the wraparound services and resources in the community, because a number of factors could be impacting why children are not coming to school. And so making sure that, again, our social workers at the table, as well as our counselors, are able to connect families and students to those resources. And then also understanding what are the barriers. If it is transportation, then what are we doing to try and help you through that? And working with parents, because sometimes it's a challenge for parents. And let's be honest that, hey, I may leave as a high school parent, and my student should be in school, and you're calling me from the school and they are not. So how do we help support parents with that aspect as well, because they're working with us? So those are some of the things that we are doing to impact the attendance. And also giving opportunities. If you still are struggling, we do have Saturday school, and so making sure that we still have opportunities to provide you with some of that instruction, even if we have to open it up on the weekend.
That type of engagement, what have you all identified as maybe the key factors that are preventing students from coming to school?
So I think it varies if you look at schools and school communities. So I can't give you one key factor, because a key factor at Beach may be a different key factor at Jenkins High School. So I think that's what those attendance teams do. They look at the data and they try to identify in their school community what's the impact of that. And then they work with that.
Them checking every week, what is the trend right now?
So we have yet to get that report. Our first report, they actually look at it. We have a system where they can check their data online. They have a dashboard, and so they've been monitoring their data, and we don't want to speak out of turn. The official report will come out later this month from our data and accountability department that gives us a zoom up and looking at how are we trending after the first semester. But the schools, when they have their weekly meetings, they actually have daily attendance rate data, as well as they have cohort data for the grade levels and the courses. So they have a dashboard that they can look at daily and weekly.
Any other questions on CCRPI?
Thank you. I will turn it back over to Ms. Blanco.
All right, I believe. Thank you, Ms. Ball-Oliver. I believe we have Larry Jackson here, our Chief Finance Officer, if you all have any questions or would like further explanation on the supplemental pay incentive. Any questions on that? All right, we have Ms. Vanessa Miller-Kegler, our Deputy Superintendent, here to talk about the long-range facilities plan, and then I believe Ms. Ball Oliver may come up and provide some information on next steps regarding the implementation of that plan.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity and the support as we have worked through our long-range facilities plan, Phase 1 for Savannah-Chatham County Public School District. I think Dr. Watts has done a magnificent job in communicating and articulating all of the work that went into it as a collaborative and as a team effort. And as she stated previously, the intent for the long-range plan is, a portion of it is to right-size the district, and making sure that we have buildings that can comfortably meet those guidelines, not only the state guidelines, but those guidelines for instruction. Having buildings that's overcrowded is not conducive to the learning process, and we manage that piece in collaboration with our academic team and all of our other partners who are responsible for providing support to the instructional process. So that was a piece for us to take into consideration as well, and just how do we manage the growth moving forward. Oftentimes, a lot of our municipalities have plans. Some plans are well developed, some are still emerging. It then has an impact on how we manage schools, how we renovate schools, how we add on to schools, and how we build schools. Our primary funding source for new schools is eSplash, which is a 5-year program that must be approved by the community, by the voters. We make a determination of those needs based on our facilities condition assessment, as well as our long-range facility plan that's required by Georgia Department of Education. That is a 5-year plan. So we look at enrollment, we look at what those needs are, and make those decisions based on that. So staff, along with the board, should be commended for their effort. We heard the community. It's not the first time that we've heard the community and had to go back and make changes to a plan. We always want to be good partners. While data is good, data is important, but making sure that we satisfy the customers that we serve, i.e. our students, our staff, and our families. And that's what you saw in the plan that came forward yesterday. So where do we go next? Where do we start next? Where do we start this morning? As a matter of fact, looking at how we start scheduling what those needs are across the district, those where we have to go in and make modifications, working to start developing timelines for those, making sure that we're looking at where those funding opportunities are for some of those buildings, and making sure that we can meet the established timeline of the upcoming school year. So we'll continue our work in Phase 1, moving to the next step, those that require input and approval from Georgia DOE, those that have to come back to the board for actual school closure. We'll be working on those components as well. Then we'll continue our preliminary work on Phase 2 as to how we continue to look at not just Western Chatham County, but what's happening on the south side. You just saw where the city approved a 300 housing unit out in Georgetown. That's going to have an impact on us. When you have 200 single housing units and townhouses and condos of 100 coming up, and there's still some that are on the table, working very closely with our Metropolitan Planning Commission. They have taught us a lot in this venture. They said wherever you see roads, you can expect to see development. So we're keeping our eyes very closely and paying very close attention to what is happening in regards to development and how we can make sure that we're doing a good job of being out in front of it to provide the educational support to communities as they grow. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Miller-Kegler. Ms. Paul Oliver, did you have anything you wanted to say about the implementation as regards our school families, this plan starting next school year?
just as a reminder, we're entering our phase 2 for developing working on our next steps. One of the key pieces of that will be developing our communication plan for our families and our schools. And again, from our presentation on yesterday, and you can find this on the website, but really focusing on those parent meetings, the meetings, continued meetings with staff, also working with our ESOL families and our student athletes and those families, making sure that they understand the implications for them and how it will impact them, and making sure that we communicate timelines, as Ms. Miller-Kegler shared, those timelines that will impact them as it relates to movement and getting that communication out. Also, the school naming, we'll be revisiting that for the multi-site complex, and that will go through the established board process, as well as establishing open house dates and opening the doors for those families that are moving, an opportunity to come in and visit those school sites to which they will be transitioning. And then, of course, examining the bell times, if any changes are needed, then we will be doing so in coordination with our operations division. So just those are some of the key takeaways from what our next steps will be as it relates to the academic side of things.
Did anybody have any questions for?
Yeah, I've got a question. You might be able to answer this, and forgive me because I was not at the board meeting yesterday, but I wanted to ask this. I know one of the things you guys talked about yesterday was taking some students from from some existing schools, moving them to other schools. For an example, in a high school, seeing New Hampstead students, some will go to Beach. How will those students that are moving be determined? Is that strictly through attendance zones, or how would that be determined?
So that is strictly through attendance zone. Ms. Miller-Kegler and her division actually looked at those attendance zones, and they did what was logical moves based on the attendance zones. And if you notice, I am looking at her so that she can make sure I'm providing an accurate answer, because I think she would be the best person to really speak to the work that her team did in determining how those zone lines would be drawn.
Along with transportation, believe it or not, our transportation group, specifically our routers, their work is critical to when we're looking at boundaries, looking at lines, because they have all of the data. They know where the housing complexes are, where the housing units are. They know where the schools are. So what we use is something that is called TransFinder, where we can actually plug in student data, addresses, school information, and determine what that logical pattern and flow should be, not just for those who are transported, but for those who are walkers in the proximity to the school. So we'll be continuing to look at that data, mention that data. That's why they were so critical as a part of this work, and will continue to be, because they know the actual enrollment to the day, what enrollment was yesterday and what the enrollment is today. They have real-time data. So when we're looking at the number of students within a building, where those students are, how those lines, they can actually see on some of their plans when they go in and pull up if there's wetlands, if it's developed, if it's undeveloped. So that is critical to us, and we'll continue some of that work. Is there anything that I missed that you want to add? Okay, so that's why, and you may have seen the transportation team with us at all times with our expert routers and their software that help us determine exactly what's in this particular school district, what's in close proximity, how do we transport, how do we look at walkers in that area, what are those safe paths, can we logically determine what that route and what that path will look for that school. So we'll continue that work. We'll be communicating that out to our families, to our staff as well, and that's some of the work that we're going to start working on and fine-tuning, because you always saw whenever we had a presentation, there were maps, and we thought that was critical to be able to see the maps, see the number of students, have those little blue dots signified the number of students, the number of families, and we'll continue to use that data. So as we prepare to go out in the community with our rollout, here is what we're looking for in the upcoming school year. They'll be able to pinpoint, in a part of our community meetings, we could have parents come up and say, how will this impact me? Does this impact me? What's your address? Like, show you what we can drill down to street level. So that's critical for us, and we'll continue to make that information available.
And I got one quick follow-up to that. So part of the next steps then would be notifying those affected families and students that would be moving, like, say, from one school to the
Exactly. Because we have looked at the number of students that, and I think one of the questions you posed was specifically related to Gould, who would be going, who's staying to Gould, and who may be going to
I think it's
New Hampstead to whatever the changes are, then certainly we'll be providing them with that data. And we had an opportunity to make that information available during the community meeting. Not all families attended, but certainly they will be receiving that information. We're not going away. We'll continue to have those community meetings. We'll continue to participate in PTA meetings. We'll continue to participate in school council meetings. We'll continue to go out. If staff wants some reassurance, the entire cabinet, we all have to play a role in this. Staff is going to have to be, notified of what's next for them. In some of those buildings, we'll be, relocating students and staff from Lago to Bet, and they'll be moving over to Pulaski and over to Windsor Forest Elementary for the renovations of that building, and then we'll be swinging another school. So there's a lot of moving parts, which is going to require a lot of communication to make sure that that information is clearly articulated to all. So when we open the doors for the 24-25 school year, everybody know where they need to be and how they got there.
Speak to the funding opportunities to address some of those renovations that you just talked about.
And I'm so glad Mr. Jackson is here, because those things we will have to look at where we're going to need to make some renovations. Over the last number of years, with us being in E4 right now, it has been a challenge for us to build on an occupied site. It's not in our best interest to do that. Sometimes we really didn't have a choice. But I think as we continue to be more focused in our efforts, we want to be able to swing those students and staff when we can. So that's what you'll see us doing with Lago Tibet. We'll be swinging all of the staff and students out of the building, going and making some renovations, and then that will serve as a swing site for Bartlett STEM. We'll update it. We don't want to work on the campus. We'll be doing some renovations over at Formie as well. Then we'll be taking a close look at Gould Elementary too.
What about the GMG complex? Is that going to need to be retrofitted now that it's no longer-
The good thing and the question that we always get, and I think I probably got it 4 times last week, what about the bathrooms? Because you had pre-K through 12 in that building, and what the state finally said and told me, do they have small bathrooms or small toilets at home? And the answer to that question is no. What we can do is provide step-ups. So there's not a lot of retrofitting. We do what we call is Jack and Jill restrooms in that P first, and I'm not sure if it's in second, but usually in pre-K, kindergarten, and in some first grade classes, which means bathrooms are shared by classrooms. So that's an easy retrofit. You know when your students are coming to the bathroom, you close this door and that door. That will not require a lot of retrofitting. When the school was designed back in 2017-18, the intent was to give us flexibility. And that's how we need to start moving forward with designing schools based on what the needs are in the future, not today. We only build schools every 40, 50 years. So that concept should be designed and built for the flexibility to meet the needs of not today, but in the future. And that is one of those schools where you're going to have a high school gym, where you're going to have a middle school gym, where you're going to have a cafeteria for high school. You're going to have a cafeteria for lower grades. You're going to have a media center, a learning commons, to be able to accommodate all ages. So when the decision was made to move to a 612, there's not a lot that we're going to have to do. We'll be looking at furniture, certainly, because I couldn't go in and sit in a elementary school desk, but that's probably one of the areas where we'll be taking a very close look, transitioning furniture maybe from one area to the other. But as it relates to bathrooms specifically, we're going to be okay there. We'll be okay with the learning center. We'll be okay with the cafeteria as well, and with the gymnasiums.
Is there a sense of the ticket price on what that's going to cost?
I mean, we're only talking about furniture, so I can pull furniture from another building. Yeah, I can transfer it from one area to another where we may have a school that's under capacity that has available furniture, then we'll transition that. But once we start getting into the buildings, furniture is still being delivered for that particular facility. So working with our partners, we may be able to take a look at it and see how we can make some modifications that may be necessary to the size of the furniture.
Hi, can you talk about the reaction to the new recommendations that were passed yesterday and how that compared to the initial reactions from the community when the first plan came out?
I think the reaction is thank you. You listened to us. You didn't just say, this is what we're going to do. This is what we sat in a room as a team and developed. They said, wait a minute, let me explain to you what impact that this will have on us. Let me explain how, emotions are there. We recognize that, but we took everything that we heard, everything that we received, and we immediately went back to the drawing board. The board meeting was on a Wednesday. Thursday morning, we cleared our calendars, and we were back at the drawing board. So we are very responsive to the community, to the staff, and to the students, and to the instructional process.
Was there a main friction point that you guys had to make the most adjustments on? Was there something that on the human side of it that the numbers and all that had to kind of coalesce?
I mean, the Gould family said, we want to stay where we are. We have the secret sauce here. It's working. So we had to, as the professionals on this end, say, why would we upset the secret sauce? We'll have to go in there and make some updates to the building. They have been living in the building, but they wanted to remain where they are. As you saw in the plan that was approved yesterday, we have now taken the east side corridor, the Formie, A.B. Williams Schuman piece, and that is now in the phase 2 piece. We'll continue our work on that particular area, and that will come forward in phase 2 because we wanted to have the opportunity to move forward with phase 1. So we looked at those areas, we listened. You got transportation, you have academics, you have finance, you have communication, you have maintenance. So we have our work, we have our focus. So that's why we embraced and welcomed the feedback and input. So then we could take that back, take a close look at it, and then make those recommendations. And like I said, it's not the first time we've had to go back to the table in my 31 years of being at the district. We'll go back and we'll make those necessary adjustments as they come forward.
You mentioned 31 years. Where does this rank on terms of community reaction, positive, negative? Where did this plan fit in your experience?
I think it's no different from what we have seen. It may not have been as public, or you may not remember the Beach Hodge Duran corridor. Some of you may have been around, may not have been around. There was a Hodge Elementary, a Duran Middle, and a Beach High School. Hodge Elementary went away. It was demolished. The community said, we want an elementary school in this community. There is an elementary school in that community. Hodge is back there. It is there. So we take a look at what the needs are of the community, what the desires are of the community, and we respond based on working together collaboratively to come up with a solution.
I wasn't at the board meeting yesterday, so excuse me, but what are the options for parents if they are upset with the long-range facilities plan?
If they are upset, my words to them is to trust us. Bring it to us. Let's look at it. Let's talk about it. If there's still something that's outstanding that we need to go back, are we going to be able to please every family in this community? The answer is no, but we're going to try to come as close to it as possible. We're not going to say, okay, well, the board has voted, we're done. We'll never close the door on parents and on information. So I'm not going to say we're going to be able to fix every one of them, but we may be able to sit down with you and come up with an alternate solution for you and your family, because every family needs are different. And if you bring those forward, we have proven, just like I brought back the Hodge for many years, and just as you saw in the previous situations, you bring it forward, we have that conversation, we look at what your needs are. It may have been something you missed, it may have been something that we missed, and then we'll work together to see how we can get you where you need to be. Mm-hmm.
Also, for some of our families right now, where the focus and the large growth that we see in the western part of the county, we do have a grandfathering option. And that is a part of what we're working on as our next steps, so that if you are a student at New Hampstead High School currently, and you are moving up next year to the 10th, 11th, or 12th grade, you can exercise that grandfathering option, provided that your parents, or you, if you're old enough to drive, provide your own transportation. So we did take a look at where we could provide some of that flexibility and options. The same is true for New Hampstead K-8 and Rice Creek K-8. If you are a rising 8th grader, meaning you're sitting in the school right now and you're a 7th grader and you want to stay and finish that final year there, then we have provided a grandfathering option for those families, recognizing that you have to provide your own transportation. And so that is one way that we have also looked at how we can support those families. And then also, as Ms. Miller-Kegler said, there could be some special circumstances, but they should be taken care of through that grandfathering clause.
Anybody else have any other questions? No, she had another appointment she had to leave for.
Would anybody be able to speak to the pre-vet grant and how some of that funding from the Biden-Harris administration is being spent, particularly in mental health?
So yes, actually, we partnered Academic Affairs with Campus Police, and we were able to secure that grant. We're really excited about that. That's going to provide us with an opportunity. We focused on 5 schools, and you'll see that focus on actually Hodge, Durin, and Beach, as well as Gadsden and Myers. And it's going to allow us to hire additional social workers and what we call a community navigator. And so those persons will be focused on working with students and families in those communities. It allows for them to build those relationships and that rapport so that they get to know the families and they are able to work with them one-on-one. So it provides additional resources. It also provides an opportunity for our campus police. They are going to be spearheading a really massive mentoring program and allowing us to reach out to the community and provide specific training and develop mentors for our students, so that we are working from a preventive side and actually educating them and providing other opportunities for them, instead of just an intervention side, but actually preventing some of what we may see in those communities before it happens, in school and out of school.
What community partners will the Board of Ed Police Department be working with?
So I know that our chief of police has talked about the 100 Black men, asking for their involvement, as well as working with some of our local churches in the area. So those are just some of the persons that we will be reaching out to.
Thank you all very much for attending today and allowing us the opportunity to address your questions on these important topics. We appreciate you coming out.